All right, looks like people are starting to join in now. Um, Welcome to our webinar series in a Cook's Kitchen with Craig Sewell. Just a couple of things. We'll have some links in the chat box, and also be sure to post your questions in the question box or the chat box if you prefer that, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the meeting. A quick word from our sponsor, Amanda Simpson from Essex Bank. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thanks, August. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Simpson. I'm the branch manager of Essex Bank, your community bank in Annapolis. We're located at the corner of West Street and Chinquapin Round Road. We also have other branches close by in Edgewater and Crofton and across Maryland as well as Virginia. I'm excited to be here this evening to present in a Cook's Kitchen with Craig Sewell. I want to thank What's Up Media for giving us this opportunity. I will see you all at the end to tell you how Essex Bank can help you with your dream kitchen or other home improvement project. Talk to you then. Craig, you can take it away.
Well, great. Actually, Mandy, your next project can come in here and redo this kitchen if you'd like. Good evening. My name is Craig Sewell. You are actually in my kitchen.
Hey, Craig. Can you put your mic down? There you go. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yep.
You're actually in my kitchen. We just decided to do this series for a few different reasons. One of which, many of you, I have a feeling, I already know. You probably took classes in the cafe or just knew me from being at a Cook's Cafe for 16 years. We closed 3 years ago. Since that time, I've been working in Southern Maryland with the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission. As we go through, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm doing these days. But what we'd like to do here is to do something I think most of you are probably doing now already. I'm not even sure what's happened to all of us over the last year, but I do know a few things. And one of which is people are cooking in their kitchens more often. Either reluctantly or willingly, they're all cooking. One of the first things that made me dawn on this was going through the supermarket soon after COVID started, and there was no bread flour and there was no yeast, which made me actually kind of happy because people are then cooking in their own kitchens again. But as now time has evolved, I think more of us are getting more attached to their kitchens. More people are maybe looking for some basics to expand their recipe repertoire to make them a little bit more comfortable in a kitchen. So we did at SMATIC, the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, we did a 15-episode cooking class that's available, and the link is in the chat box, that you can watch at your leisure. It's free. That will kind of lead people through a lot of kitchen basics that we're going to touch on somewhat tonight and in a couple weeks, and then a couple weeks after that. So tonight, I have 4 basic things I'd like to do. The first quarter, I'd like to just spend on things we need to do just to make sure that we have a healthy kitchen, we know some of the basics, work on a little knife skills, talk a little bit about cleanliness and things like that. And then I want to move directly into some local foods. I have some chickens from a farm just down the road from me. I live in Edgewater, down on Muddy Creek Road. Sarah Campbell has New Roots Farm, and the chicken that we're going to cut up tonight is from Sarah. So we're going to cut up a chicken, and we're going to do 3 different things with that one chicken. One of the things about local foods is they're not inexpensive. The chicken that we're using tonight is a $20 chicken. You can go to Safeway and buy a $7, $8, $9 chicken. Why would anybody spend $20 on a chicken if you can buy one that's a little less expensive? I want to kind of go through that, but I think the most important thing is that you don't buy meat for just one meal. Buy meat for more than one meal to get the maximum amount of usage that you can. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a chicken stock. Then we're going to do a chicken piccata. And then we're going to do an Alice Waters recipe, which is a Mediterranean type chicken. But first, I want to start with some knife skills. If you took cooking classes from me in the past, you know that the first thing we do when we go in the kitchen is we learn how to cut an onion. So here's an onion. Vegetables have a very annoying habit of being round. So the first thing we need to do is to either find or make a flat side. So this is an onion. Sprout side on top, root side on the bottom. We're going to keep the root side intact, turn it on the side, and take off the sprout side. This is my compost bucket. So now I have a flat side. I hate chasing my food around the cutting board. One thing you should know is when you cut an onion and you cry, either one of two things is happening. Either your knife is not sharp enough or your onion is not cold enough. Oh, do you keep your onions in the refrigerator? The answer is yes, that I do. So we've cut this onion in half. Now is the time to peel it. I will tell you that the chat box, the question box is active. I don't mind if you ask questions along the way and if they're food related, and we'll do our best to answer it as the class goes on. But here we go. We have an onion, and notice all, if you can, all the lines in this particular onion. Those lines are saying, cut me here. Now, leaving the root end intact, start following those lines around the outside of the onion. So, still whole. Make one lateral cut. Now, important part. When you're holding your food on a cutting board, keep the normal way people have learned is to hold it like this. Put your fingertips behind your knuckles, your thumb back here, and just let your knife glide over the onion. Notice most all the pieces are the same size. You would do that with the other one. With carrots, I'm going to do a quick wash on these. And then a quick peel. What we're doing here is we're talking about knife skills, but we're also making a mirepoix. A mirepoix is a French term, and a mirepoix is made up of three things: carrots, onion, celery. 50% onion, 25% carrot, 25% celery. It is the base of all stocks. It is the base of most sauces in French cooking.
Hey, Craig.
Yes, sir.
Someone wants to know if you have to peel carrots.
I do. Because candidly, I don't know where my carrots come from. If you buy them in the grocery store, they may say organic. Organic does not necessarily mean clean. So I go ahead and I do, in fact, peel those. In fact, nobody really knows what organic means anymore. Now, celery is kind of a different sort of thing, but also if you notice there are ridges in celery, what I do is I try to grab one of those ridges and chase it right down, because I want to ensure as much as possible that everything that I'm cutting is cut the same size as everything else. So let's pretend that we have 50% onion, 25% celery, and 25% carrot. This is our mirepoix, and this is going to be the base of the chicken stock that we're doing.
Craig, someone asked, why do you throw away the leaves and tops?
Well, I don't throw them away. They're actually going in compost. But to more directly answer your question, I don't put them in stock because a stock, I'm a classicist. I used to teach entire classes on stock and sauces and whatnot. A true stock should be very clear, as clear as possible. When I start putting leaves and tops and things like that into stock, it's going to end up clouding it because they're going to disintegrate within the stock. And even if you strain it, you're not going to be able to get it out. Now, having said that, soup is different from stock. So stock can make a good soup. Stock can also make a good sauce, but you can do all sorts of things with soup. So I think that answers your question. So here we have these. A couple of comments about my kitchen. So I had a great large kitchen, great Vulcan stoves and all the rest of that. When we closed the cafe, my wife and I downsized. So we moved into a little beachy place, and it has this little kitchen, and it has an electric stove, which I can't express enough to you how much I dislike it. It's extremely difficult to control. It's hard to be a really good cook on an electric stove, but we have reached some sort of truce in that when you cook on an electric stove, you need to move things around a lot while you allow a burner to heat up or a burner to come down. So over the next few things, I'll comment on it a ways, but at any rate, it is it's difficult to do sometimes. And that is a secret recipe that's going to come out at the end of class. So what I'd like to do now is to move into cutting up the chicken. So as I told you, this is a chicken from Sarah Campbell's farm. There are actually 3 farms in Anne Arundel County that sells poultry. One of them is Sarah's at New Roots Farm. The other one is David Habercorn's Morris Hill Farm, which is in Trace's Landing. And then Dina Tice at Enticement Meats in South County. What I am doing these days is that I'm working with all the livestock farmers in Southern Maryland. Beef people, pork people, chicken people. And what we're trying to do is make it easier for you to be able to find great stuff like this and be able to buy it. One of the things about local foods is we don't make it really convenient for you to buy them. You need to go to the farmer's market. You need to go to a farm stand. People are convenience shoppers these days. So what I've been trying to do is we're building, I'm actually in charge of building a regional agricultural center down in St. Mary's County and working with local butcher shops to try to complete the food chain to you. So that hopefully within the next couple of years, you're going to be able to go to your local grocery store and make these choices. Now this is about I'd say maybe a 4.5 pound bird from Sarah's. It's a pasture raised bird, which means it lived totally cage free. Now don't be confused with advertisements that say cage-free, because cage-free, legally speaking, just means they live in a bigger cage. These were actually pasture-raised chickens. They ran around, got lots of sun, ate bugs, just lovely birds. But you notice they don't have these voluminous chests that most grocery store birds have. I'm actually getting to the point where I'm sort of revulsed by that huge, huge kind of bird that looks like a small turkey. This is a great bird. You should also know that when birds are being processed, these local farmers are processing all of these on their own farms. They take classes, they have regulations through the health department so that they don't go to those big kind of scary meat processors. The woman that raised this bird also processed this bird for you. So directly, really seriously, directly from farm to this table. So here we have this bird. So out of that, we're going to take three things, and it's actually a very, very simple process to cut up a chicken if you know what you're doing. So we're going to do a recipe with the hindquarters, which are the legs and the thighs. We're going to do a boneless, skinless breast. The rest of them are all going to go into stock. So let's take a look at this, the leg and the thigh. Now, I can't see what you're seeing, so I'm hoping that you can. The legs, the thigh and legs on a bird are a ball and socket. So if you just take your knife and you flick it around, you can actually pop that and very easily take that off. Coming to the other side, flick open the skin. Once again, pop it. There. You can do the same with the wings if you care to. Now, I hope I'm not losing any of you. When I used to do this in class in the cafe, I used to have a couple people that used to excuse themselves and go into the other room for a while. But nevertheless, here we have now a situation where we loosen the skin here and we have exposed the back and the breast. If you just stick your finger right in here, you can actually pull the meat away from the ribs because we're doing a boneless breast here. When you're deboning, just use the tip of the knife to free it up from ribs or bones. Let me get this out of the way. So one breast. Now what this is here is this is the chicken tender. And let's go to the other side. Stick our finger between the ribs, loosen it up with the tip of our knife. I might add, it's very nice to have sharp knives. one of the best places to get your knives sharpened is when Severna Park has its farmer's market. Go and talk to Mike. Mike will sharpen your knife for $2 or $3 a blade, and they'll stay sharp for quite a while. So here we have, I'll take the tenderloin out here too. This is going to go into our stock pot. Now, I had the burner on, so we've lightly sweated the vegetables, the mirepoix in the bottom. I've added the meat. To make a good stock, you should, to make a good stock, the younger the chicken, the better. If you're going to make beef stock, the younger the beef, the better. What you're doing with the stock is that you're releasing and melting the gelatins and the cartilage that are inside the bones. Stocks are different than broths. So bone broths are extremely trendy these days. To me, stock and bone broth is interchangeable, but there's lots of variations on bone broths. And just to let you know that there is a wealth of information in Southern Maryland. The woman that wrote this book, Nourishing Broth, which is kind of the go-to book for bone broth, is written by a woman from Southern Maryland. And she has a farm, and she's part of my Southern Maryland Meats program and runs a farm called P.A. Bowen's Farmstead down there in St. Mary's County. So what we have here, and let me spend a moment. What I have in the sink is a bleach bucket. When we're using poultry, good idea to set yourself up a sanitation station. The recipe is actually 1 teaspoon of bleach for every quart of water. So I keep my hands in it, I keep my blades in it. I'm going to wash off this entire cutting board. With this, we are just going to add enough cold water to cover the bones.
Hey, Craig, we had another question.
Sure.
Can the local sources of chicken and meat be found on your website?
Yes. Dropped in the chat box is a southernmarylandmeats.com website. Southern Maryland Meats is actually a program that I run in Southern Maryland. The website is all the livestock farmers in Southern Maryland that belong to the Southern Maryland Meats program. What that means is that they have all taken the pledge that they're going to raise their animals, that regardless of species, they're going to raise their animals with access to pasture. They're not going to use antibiotics. They're not going to use growth hormones. So they're basically very clean, very clean animals. There's a wide variety. So if you get on the Southern Maryland Meats website, it's a searchable database according to county, according to species, and you can go to the website and it has contact information where you can go and find places to buy poultry, places to buy pork. I think the next class we will do will be with some pork and beef, but both from heritage breeds. One of them that we'll do is from a Kune Kune breed from some folks that are in Calvert County, which is a marvelous little heritage breed of pork that's very hairy, and they're pastured, so they don't live in pig pens. They roam around and forage around, and they have the most beautiful kind of ruby colored meat, quite luscious. You'll see next time. So what we have here, we're almost done with our stock. So these hindquarters we're going to use for the Alice Waters Mediterranean chicken recipe. These boneless breasts we're going to use for the chicken piccata, and I'm just going to throw these wings in the stock as well. Now the stock and the bleach. The stock is not totally done yet. In fact, the stock won't be done for 5 or 6 hours. But we have our mirepoix, we have our chicken parts, and now we're going to add our aromatics, which are fresh thyme, black peppercorns, bay leaf, and Italian parsley, which unfortunately I don't have. But voila, cheesecloth. So what we're doing here is we're making what's called a sachet de piece, a bag of spice. And we're just going to drop this in. Now, actually, to kind of go back to an earlier question about why I don't put the tops in here, I also put the spice in here because I can take this out at the end and none of the little thyme leaves are going to be floating in there. We're going to bring this up to a low simmer, very low simmer, just a blub, 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 not a rapid boil. If you do a rapid boil, you start churning up the ingredients inside the fat globules and whatnot within the chicken parts itself are going to start disintegrating into the stock, and that's what makes a cloudy stock. Now, a cloudy stock by itself is not a bad thing. But if you want it to last a while, particulates that are floating within a stock are the things that will go bad on you in your refrigerator quicker than if you had a clear stock. So we're going to cook this, we're going to reach this low boil. We're going to have this on here for 5 or 6 hours, and then we'll strain it. You can strain it through a cheesecloth. You can strain it through a chinois. You can strain it through a sieve. But what you want to do is try to disturb it as little as possible. At this point, we don't touch the stock. We don't stir it. We don't manipulate it. We don't poke things down in it. If it starts to evaporate too much, add a little bit of water at the top. That the more you stir it, the more particulates you're going to loosen up. And what we want to do is at the end of the day, come up with a pretty clear stock, which is what I have here. When you start doing a stock, you'll notice, if you can see, that you have a little bit of bubbles and whatnot on the surface. Those are just impurities that you just take a spoon and you just take out. This has been going about 5 hours right now, so this is about done. The way I can tell a stock is done is take a fork and take a little bit of meat off of the bone and taste it. When it doesn't taste like anything anymore, your stock is done, because it's already given you everything that it's going to be able to give you.
Hey, Craig.
Yes, sir.
Someone asked if you added any water to the stock.
Well, I put a bunch of water just in. I have the one I just showed that's been going for 5 or 6 hours. It has evaporated and I have added water to it throughout the course of the day, yes. If that answers your question. So we're going to move this off to the side now. In fact, I think I'll just do this. And let's move along to chicken piccata. During the course of cooking classes, and if you drop by the Southern Maryland Meats website in a Cook's Kitchen series, you'll see that we go through 15 different episodes. And what I try to do in those episodes is through using recipes to introduce a new cooking skill each time along the way. The reason I like to do piccata, because I like to do classic dishes. The reason I do piccata is it teaches a couple things. One is a standard breading technique, standard French breading technique. We're going to do a pan saute, and then we're going to do a pan reduction sauce. And I know people go to restaurants, and when we still had restaurants, when you go to restaurants and you see done in a pan reduction sauce, well, that's exactly what this is. And it's actually quite simple. There's a little twist at the end that you need to master to be able to do it, but we'll do that. So, standard breading technique. First thing I want to do
Someone asked, do you recommend using bottled water versus well water? They have a lot of iron.
I have well water here, and I have a closet over here which looks like the Starship Enterprise, and water softening and antibacterials and all sorts of stuff. So to answer your question, when I boil and things like that, I go ahead and use tap water. What I was searching for a minute ago was my meat pounder, and I didn't readily see it. So I'm going to use my grandmother's meat pounder. When everybody went through my grandmother's house, when she passed many years ago, everybody was picking this or that or the other thing. I got her cast iron skillets. So we're going to give these a bit of a pounding. Now, I want to highlight just for a minute these breasts, because I think we've all gotten so accustomed to just getting those huge steroid breasts at the grocery store, which really the longer I spend working with local farmers, the more grossed out I get by all of those things. So to get a nice thin, you need to start with a nice lean bird and not an artificially huge bird. But we're going to do three things. Egg, and these are pasture raised eggs. And I don't want to sound preachy about this, but if you only buy one locally sourced thing ever, make it eggs. Pasture raised eggs have half the cholesterol, a lot of good things, and they're also much, much fresher. So we're going to go flour. Preheat your skillet, flour, egg wash, breadcrumbs. These breadcrumbs I made, you can buy, and if you get a little spot that for some reason doesn't stick, just go ahead and put it back in. You can buy breadcrumbs. What I do with breadcrumbs is leftover baguette, I put in the freezer, because if you don't put it in the freezer, this won't work. But I freeze it and then take the shredding dial on my food processor and then just force the frozen bread through, and it comes up with just great breadcrumbs. So there we are. That. So, little known fact, the commercial eggs that you buy in a grocery store were usually laid somewhere between 6 and 8 months ago. These were laid 3 days ago. Canola oil. You can use olive oil if you wish. Not quite there yet. I love my stove. So we're going to put some color onto the chicken piccata. Then we'll remove it from the skillet and we'll do our pan reduction sauce in it. And while this is going, we're going to go ahead and start on the prep for our next dish.
Someone asked if you thought of replacing the electric stove you don't like with an induction.
Oh, induction. Were I to replace it, I would replace it with gas. Not that I have a huge problem with induction, but I'm pretty old school in that I like to see flame. It gives me pleasure to be able to cook and be able to regulate in that way. Induction, I've cooked on it before, and it's the instant on, instant off, instant heat, instant cooling. And I think it's just a question of getting used to it. And it's probably the wave of the future. But given all things considered, I'd prefer gas. So that's going. So let's take a look. I don't know if you're following along here. We have the chicken piccata. And now let's talk about braising. Braising is actually one of my favorite things to do. My favorite cookbook is a cookbook called Old World Cooking, yay thick, not a hugely popular cookbook, but it talks about the origins of cooking and how things began single pot, over open flame, cooked for a long time, using all parts of the animal. So what I, for instance, this morning, what I'm introducing into Southern Maryland is the concept of whole animal butchery, where we use the entire animal for different purposes. Whole animal butchery is not a new thing, but it hasn't really been practiced for 100 years or so in favor of industrial type cooking. Across the country, there are a lot of people that are migrating into the whole animal butchery, which is getting involved in charcuteries and salamis and prosciuttos and smoking and fermentation and using different cuts of the animal. For instance, next time we get together, I want to use a skirt steak and a hanging tender and those sort of things that you may not commonly see, but should know about, because those are the sort of cuts from animals that make us waste less and enjoy more. I will say this, that there are several leaders in the whole animal butchery world around the country these days, and they're all young women, by the way, which is just a fascinating thing. Smatic has been good. They've sent me around the country to learn butchery. So this morning, I was with our Amish community in St. Mary's County. We've built a building and we're about ready to be USDA approved for animal processing in Southern Maryland. So we're actually going to be able to start localized processing for local foods, which might sound simple, but believe me, is not. So in the Mediterranean chicken dish, once again, this is an Alice Waters recipe from San Francisco, from Chez Panisse. And it's pretty simple. Braising is a technique of using water and using dry heat in the oven to be able to cook meats. And it allows us to be able to use lesser cuts of meat and achieve a higher quality of product. And so we're going to, in this particular case, I mean, this is a lovely chicken. Anyway, so when we get into the beef and pork, being able to use chuck roasts and shoulders and things like that, and slow roasting and braising to really bring out the flavors and being able to use those in a dry heat sort of situation is fantastic. Now, we were chatting before all of you got here about things like Instant Pots and things like that. I have an Instant Pot. I think it's pretty cool. And I use it for rice and I use it for beans. And I also have Stella is my dog and I make her dog food through it, but it's not for meats. Meats, in my opinion, should go into like a La Cuisine or a Dutch oven and be able to slow cook in the oven is a much better way to treat that. So we are going to do our mise en place. Mise en place is 3 words, 3 French words, M-I-S-E-E-N-P-L-A-C-E. Mise en place means everything in its place. Basically means when you start cooking, make sure you have everything that you need. For instance, Italian parsley, which I didn't have everything that you need and start cooking at that point. Things get overcooked or undercooked when you don't do that, because you get to a point in the recipe, especially if you're a recipe reader and you just kind of go step 1, step 2, step 3. When you get to step 3, you realize that you didn't get something out of the refrigerator that you have to go searching for, and that's when meats or whatever can get overdone. So make sure you have all your mise en place. So in this case, we have onion, we have tomato, we have garlic. We have rosemary. Now in this dish, what we're going to do, let me peek at this. Remember, sprout side, root side. Take the sprout side off, cut it in half, peel it. And now I am hopping around just a little bit here because when I do a class, I like hate having dead air. So I like to always be active for you when I'm doing something. So this dish is, I'm going to finish this in the oven. So we've browned it on top of the stove. So the question is, or it should be, how long do you cook it? And the answer is until it's done. How do you know it's done? Well, in this particular case, what we want to do is we wanted to put color on it, because what we're going to do, this is all the time it's going to spend on the top of the stove. So this is all the time that you're going to be able to put color on it. So when you present it to your guest, to your family, that's the color that you want to present to you. So you peek at it, you get it done in that way. Now, Kathy, I'm going to have to reach behind you for something.
Hey, Craig, do you
Yes, sir.
recommend any type of tomatoes for winter season cooking?
I'm gonna. There is no great option. There is just simply the option of choosing the lesser of evils. In this particular case, they're the plum tomatoes. An enhancement, actually, it's actually a really great question. An enhancement to this particular dish that might be good to do in the wintertime is to lightly caramelize these tomatoes before you actually do the sauce. I didn't think about that until just now. But at any rate, just to take these, the way to de-seed a tomato, an easy way, especially a plum tomato, is just take the end off and then just sort of slide your fingers down to get as many of the seeds out as possible. Now, you don't have to do that for this particular dish, but if you're going to do a caramelization of tomatoes, which actually is a lovely thing to do, so squeeze those seeds out, coat them with olive oil, and throw them in a 350-degree oven for half hour. And it really intensifies the flavor, and I think would really enhance this dish, by the way. So good suggestion. Okay, for the piccata, and I'm referring to the recipe because I usually don't. And I want to make sure that when you do this, you're going to be able to revert to it and say, well, Craig didn't do it that way. So on the stove, I'm going to do about a cup of white wine. Lemon juice. Let's use 2 lemons on this. If you have a juicer, that's great. If you don't, grab a fork. You may remember Grandma had a lemon reamer, probably a wood thing. And we're going to let this reduce. And I'm going to add these lemons in there. So as they heat up, they'll release some of the oils from the peel. And as that reduces, we're going to reduce this to just a couple of tablespoons. It's going to really intensify the flavor. Then we're going to take that off burner. And this is, so we're pan reducing. So it's bubbling, it's evaporating, it's reducing, it's intensifying in its flavor. We're going to take it off burner when it gets to the right point. We're going to lose the lemon peels, take it off burner, and then we're going to swirl in the butter. And when we do that, here we go. the butter solids, the butter fats will thicken the sauce. In the meantime, we make our garnish. Probably add a few capers to this. Okay, still in there. At this point, it's going to finish the sauce. We're going to have the chicken breast on the plates, and then directly from the pan, sauce goes on the plates, garnish goes on there, and it goes on the table. So start to finish, this is probably half-hour dish maybe. So as we're waiting for this to reduce, and it's reducing pretty good. I'm going to continue with the prep for the Mediterranean chicken because I talk too much. These are pretty thin breasts, so I don't really have any doubt on whether or not they're done or not. But if you're using those big steroid breasts that I've been criticizing, take a meat thermometer, insert it in the fattest part. You're going to cook it to 170 degrees to make sure that it's fully done, which is what you would cook your Thanksgiving turkey to and whatever. It's 175 degrees, 165, 170 degrees for that. So, can they see here?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Craig, someone asked if if you use capers with the brine or without.
These are without. Well, these I drained and then rinsed. If I can't control it, which is the reason, by the way, that you also always use unsalted butter. You never cook with salted butter, always unsalted butter, because you can't control the amount of salt in your ingredients if you do that. If I add the brine to it, I suppose over time I would kind of learn, but I can't control the saltiness of that brine. So I would prefer just adding the taste of the capers. Okay, we can lose the lemons. What we're looking for here is when we take a spoon and we pull it off. And I know you probably can't see this, but when you pull it across the pan, it's going to start leaving a distinct trail. So we're almost there. Yeah, let's try this. See, we're just starting to. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's bubbling away ferociously. It's leaving a pretty good trail. I've got about 2 teaspoons left to evaporate. So just very quickly work this butter into the remainder. And the butter fats are thickening. That's good. Okay, so there's our piccata. Okay. So what would I serve with that? Maybe a polenta, something like that. You can do it with do a creamy like rosemary polenta with that. And now very quickly, I'm gonna lead you through the rest of it because I don't want to keep you too much longer. But the Mediterranean chicken, we're gonna brown the side. The recipe is actually very good on this. It says to do this on a medium oven for 12 minutes on one side, flip it 4 minutes on the other side. You put it in a pan. We're going to then, once this is done, we do it right side up into like a baking dish. We saute off the onions and the tomatoes. We add we add some of our chicken stock to this, tomatoes to this, capers once again, Kalamata olives, some fresh rosemary and bay leaf, which you'll discard. And then that's your Mediterranean chicken. So I've kept you all for about an hour. We're going to regroup again in a couple weeks. Any comments about this? I've never taught a class with headphones on before. But it was a pleasure seeing all of you, and look forward to seeing you again.
Hey, Craig, we had a question. Do you have a preferred material for cutting boards? Wood, plastic, does it matter?
Okay, 2 answers to that question. One, this cutting board is like my favorite thing in the world. And this was made for me by a farmer in Southern Maryland, and it weighs about 15 pounds. It's huge. I prefer wood. Always wood. I even have a smaller one over here. If you're interviewing the health department would prefer plastic. I think wood is fine because I always clean as I go. So if you have, despite this mess, if you have a bleach bucket or you have sanitizing agents and you use a wood cutting board and you wipe your cutting board off frequently, you're terrific. I just happen to like the look and the feel of a cutting board. I have a plastic one around here as well. But that's my preference.
Someone else asked why canola oil versus olive oil.
2 reasons. Canola oil has a higher what's called flash point. So a flash point is when you have a pan on the stove. A flash point is at what point the oils start to smoke. So butter, for instance, has a very low flash point. It burns quickly. Olive oil, slightly up from that. Canola oil, slightly up from that. Grapeseed oil has the highest flash point. So if you're doing some really high temperature saute work, you're going to use a grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil is also quite expensive. Part 2 is that it depends on the dish. This dish, the Mediterranean chicken dish, would have been fine with olive oil. The chicken piccata, I prefer canola oil because canola oil has a neutral flavor. Olive oil tastes like olives. So if you want that olive flavor in it, by all means. If you want a more neutral flavor, then use a canola oil or a vegetable oil. Great.
If there's any more questions, post them in the chat. If not, we'll go ahead and close it out. Amanda, did you want to tell them how they can reach you?
Yes, thanks, August, and thanks, Craig. That was really enlightening. It was very informative. That was great. And thank you again to What's Up Media. I wanted to end the evening by sharing how Essex Bank can help you build your dream kitchen. If you have equity in your home, a home equity line of credit may be ideal for you. With the currently low interest line of credit, the payments are affordable, there are generally no closing costs, and our competitive turnaround time can have you on your way to your new kitchen or other renovation in just a couple of weeks. So please contact me at our Annapolis office on West Street, or you can call any Essex Bank branch today. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you, Craig, and I hope you all have a good evening.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Just so everyone knows, the next class will be in 2 weeks on March 11th at the same time, 6 p.m. And the registration is up now on our website, whatsupmag.com/InACook's You can also find Craig's company and the recipes on his website, southernmarylandmeats.com and southernmarylandmeats.com/InACook's series. All right, thanks to all for joining.
Thank you.